Hello, everyone. Welcome into another episode of Capturing the Game. It's the Game Within the Game podcast featuring me, Desmond Jones, and Brady. Today, we have an absolute gem of a guest. She is the reporter and broadcaster at Fox Sports 96.9 FM and 1340 AM. And she's also the digital host at the Washington football team. She is an extraordinary person. She is no other than Kelsey Nicole Nelson. How are you doing today?
I'm fantastic. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for the fabulous introduction. So now I know we're gonna have a good time.
Oh,
I'm
oh
excited
yeah.
to be here.
Yeah, we're definitely going to have a good time. Today we're recording on Father's Day, so thank you for taking time out your busy schedule
Of
to
course.
with us.
Well, thank my dad. Thank my dad
Yeah,
for allowing me time to take out of his day to join you all. But now I'm excited to be here. And it's a great day. Dads have done amazing things. So I'm glad to get to honor and pay tribute to them, especially as someone who has a girl dad and is a big product of the dad that just was so awesome for me growing up. Was at every sports game, every honor roll assembly, and everything else.
I know that's right. Brady, how's your Father's Day been going for you?
Been pretty good. Nice day over here, so nice weather to be outside.
Man, it just got done raining out here, so
Oh, over here in Ohio, it's like 90 degrees. It was sun shining. It was great.
Sorry, Desmond. It was sunny here too in DC. I'm sorry.
Yeah, must be nice. But yeah, Kelsey, go ahead and tell the audience a little bit about yourself so they can get to know who you are.
Of course, yeah. So I'm Kelsey Nicole Nelson, born and bred in the DMV area, a graduate of the University of Maryland College Park and Georgetown University, and I now work in DC as a freelance sports reporter. So as you mentioned, I work with Fox Sports Radio here, where I cover all of our great professional teams. We're still calling ourselves a District of Champions, so covering our District of Champion teams, as well as all the major collegiate college teams in the area. And I also have my own sports talk podcast called Listen In with KNN that I host for the show. It's been going on about 3 years now. And I've just been so blessed and happy to see it grow. And of course, taking that from just audio to live stream has been a lot of fun. I also work with the Washington football team, the NFC East Division champions, who are hoping to be the reigning champions once again this year. Washington football team hosting two of their digital shows, The Fit and the Life, as well as one of their television shows called Washington Unfiltered. And then I'm also teaching at Georgetown University, adjunct professor, helping with capstones. So basically keeping busy, covering sports teams, and just keeping in the know. So again, thanks so much for having me.
No, thank you for joining, and that's a lot. I don't even know where to begin. I guess where we can start is, how did you fall in love with sports? Where did that drive, that passion, where'd that come from?
Yeah, such a great question. And again, I think it's so great I'm joining the show on Father's Day because as someone who has a girl dad, my dad taught me a love of sports. And before this show, I was talking with Desmond about how my family is down south. And if you're from down south, you understand how sports is a part of culture, especially football. And so, like I say, I
Oh
grew up
yeah.
with a big faith, right? It was church and football. You love those two things, and you take them both seriously. My dad went to Grambling State University, so me being a girl's dad, the first thing I knew was Grambling State football, Bayou Classics, and of course Doug Williams. Never let go of a love of football. Played a bunch of sports growing up. I always liked being around the game. I was always watching the games with my dad, trying to analyze and talk through them. I played soccer, tennis, basketball, volleyball. I just like being around the game. I'm a very competitive person. I like athletics. I love seeing the crowd, love seeing my parents in the stands, and sports, I guess, have always touched on me. And then growing up in the DC area, it was great because I would go through Boys and Girls Club or our local community centers to the sports arenas here. We had the MCI Center, which is now Capital One Arena. So I remember going to games there. I remember going to Baltimore Ravens training camp in Westminster, like just always being around the game, just always being excited, meeting the players, and just that atmosphere. And so I think for me, it's kind of been one of those things where sports was a first love for me, and I really just never let go, right? I made it a career, which I'm blessed today to be continuing in that career because, I'm living out my dream, right, that I started so early. So it's special thanks to my dad for getting me kind of into it. And then sports just kept providing opportunities where I was able to just keep growing within it.
No, that's it's very, very like awesome. Like I see you as a trailblazer, because you're one of the first to do a lot of things right now, especially like you're inspiring. I know you're inspiring a lot of youth today as well with your career right now. And I know it is growing up in the South, or at least, I hear the stories from my father. Is always cares about grandma. Yeah, he went to Southern, but it's always about the
Yeah,
Southern.
we'll let that slide.
Yeah, we'll let that slide. But yeah, so he it was always, loved Southern. He always loved the football classics. It was something
Yeah.
that my family went to every year, so I definitely can relate. Look, my aunties and uncles, a lot of them, they grew up in the church. I mean, judging right now, they might be still be in church right now. But
Yes,
yeah,
you go to Southern Church, like it's all day. It's an all day thing.
oh man, but yeah, no, that's so awesome just to hear how you fall in love with sports. What was your favorite sport like growing up that you loved to play?
Yeah,
Like,
that I love to play. So definitely, I'll always love basketball, right? I mean,
okay,
who doesn't? How do you not love the game of basketball? But I'll tell you, I did play flag football, which was super cool too. But definitely basketball. I mean, nothing like making your first three, right? Or thinking you're
yeah,
like Mike or MJ. So I think basketball was definitely my first love. And I'll tell you, like growing up here and watching the Washington Mystics, seeing players like Elena Beard and Coco Miller, like I've just always loved the game, right? I've always loved ball. I mean, I feel like now that's why when I pass the basketball court and it's empty, it's hard for me because I remember when I was a kid, we couldn't wait to get to the basketball court and then finally get your chance to play, or you
yeah.
have to win to keep on the court. Like I love and cherish those memories. So basketball, the hoop, the ball, everything, the game will always have and be my first love.
Basketball definitely a great sport. It's one I stopped playing in high school just because I want to focus on running, and I did that collegiately. So I can understand, like I'd love to just go pick a basketball up and play, but I just don't have enough time to go out and do that.
I get the
But
feeling. It's hard now. I'm so busy now. I haven't played in a while, but now where I just moved, I have a basketball court like close to me, like across the street. So I told myself I'm going to get back on the court because I miss it. Like I miss the game, and it just helps. It's a fun way to keep active, right?
I know that's right. We're between me and my wife, and we've been trying to get this basketball room up. So hopefully by the time this podcast actually releases, it'll actually be up. But that's
Into existence, right? It's gonna happen.
yeah, it's going to happen. It's going to happen soon. Hopefully sooner rather than later. That's for sure.
And that's what counts, as long as it happens.
Right. So how does it feel to grow up to cover a team that you grew up in the city as?
Yeah, I'll tell you, for me, I still do this, which is pinching myself because
Yeah,
to grow up in Washington is to know that burgundy and gold means everything. We are a football town. I mean, Washington football bleeds through this entire city. I mean, there's Washington football team things everywhere. And I tell people all the time, like growing up here, I mean, you would see the players in the community, people going to games, just the storied history of the football team, RFK Stadium and what that means to the city and what this city was like during the Joe Gibbs era and when they were winning championships. Like no one will forget that in Washington. I tell people all the time, I've been to Washington football team funerals and Washington football team weddings. And that's to say that people love their team and you're going to make sure that everybody knows it. And no matter how the team is, you will see Washington football team gear everywhere, right? So this is a Washington football team. I think these are the other sports in DC, right? They're just on this high pedestal. And it's not that DC doesn't love the other sports, but again, we're a football town. We will be behind that team through thick and through thin, right? And it's a passion that you grow into. And especially being the nation's capital, having the football team here again, it means so much. And so for me to be a young girl that when I couldn't even afford to go to watch a Washington football team game in person, and to now be working for that same team, it's incredible. It truly is. It's incredible. And then also I think to be a part of a team as a Black woman, part of a team that was the last team to integrate in the National Football League, I think it just shows you sometimes how life comes full circle, right? And sometimes things happen throughout history and how the growth has occurred throughout history. So a team that, for one, I couldn't even watch growing up because my parents and me didn't have enough money. To two, not seeing people that look like me work for that team, to now work for that team, it's incredible. And I'm honored. And I think to be a part of DC culture and know how integrated the Washington football team is into this culture, and to be someone from the area, it means a lot, right? Because there's no place like home. room. And there's nothing like covering your hometown team in front of people that have really watched you grow, saw your career grow, and knew you from when you were like this big and couldn't even talk to now seeing you talk a lot and get paid to do it, right? So it's a great feeling, and it's surreal, and it's an experience, that I'll never forget. Just getting a chance to work for the Washington football team, one of the biggest franchises in football, and again, with one of the most passionate fan bases in football.
That's awesome. I know you were mentioning about the integration or anything like that. What types of challenges have you seen on your journey with the sports media and then working with the Washington football team?
Yeah, such a great question. So I think you guys might get this because I feel like you all are men that are in the 2021 and the 21st century and just get it, but you'd be surprised. There's still a good amount of people out there that for some reason think if you're a woman that you just can know nothing about sports and that you're supposed to be far away from it. And it's so unfortunate. So I think as a woman in sports, you're always feeling like you have to prove yourself, like everything's an audition, right? Like everyone's questioning you, waiting for you to mess up, right? Or make a mistake because they don't feel like you should belong there. So I think one of the biggest things is showing that you belong in a room, making sure that you're heard and that your voice is heard. And then another thing is being taken seriously, right? Like I'm here to do a job. I'm here as a reporter. And yes, I happen to be a female. And yes, I happen to be African-American. But the main thing is that I'm here as a reporter, right? And that's what you have to respect. And so I think it's fighting for that respect. I think as a woman too, fighting for equal pay and things like that, even fighting for women's sports coverage, right? I think I have a duty and an obligation to do that as a reporter. And I think fighting for the stories that matter, right? And so now, especially after the killing of George Floyd, we've seen more stories which should have been there, but talking about the integration of sports and politics and so many other things. And so again, you're fighting for what you believe in, but also trying to do your job and be objective. You're fighting as a woman to be included in a space. And I always tell people, you have to sometimes create a seat at the table, right? Because sometimes that chair won't be extended to you. Sometimes they'll act like, you're not supposed to be there. And so I think it's a lot of that, but also just finding opportunities. It's not the easiest thing to find opportunities in sports, and get a job. Like everything that's posted, sometimes it's just posted as it has to be posted, and they already have the candidate in mind or who they're going to hire, right? So trying to persuade people that you're the right person for the job, getting that job, but also keeping that job, right? Because it's one thing to get in the door, but it's another thing to stay there because it's a competitive field, and it's just hard, right? So for me, I think the hardest thing was really finding opportunities, especially starting out my career in DC, the nation's capital, right? One of the most powerful cities in the world where we have really great sports reporters who have been here for a long time. So coming up young and trying to make a name for yourself was not the easiest thing, trying to brand build and get people to show that I am a reputable source, right? That I am credible, that they can trust me, but that I also bring my own flair to things. And you're doing something different, out the ordinary, right? Being innovative. I think those are some of the challenges. But I think once you kind of just keep the repetition up and just show people you're here to stay and you're serious, you'll get people to follow your brand and believe in you, and then opportunities will come. But again, it's not easy. And even now, still navigating the field, trying to find those opportunities. And of course, we're always fighting for diversity in sports. I think you both know we need more women in sports. We need more color in sports, right? So we're still fighting for that. So strides have been made, but again, just trying to make sure that everybody's kind of a part of that and wants to see inclusion and wants to see diversity so we can all win together.
Yeah, and that's the thing that we've had on recent episodes too. We've had a bunch of women on the thing about the sports aspect of it, and that it's such a male driven and male dominated world that for you guys it's hard to get into, and once you're in, it's like, okay, we're there, but then now what? It's just
exactly.
It seems as we're just seeing it, you get these stories, and I don't know if you ever experienced that. You could probably tell us if you had like this awesome story, this awesome view, but it just wasn't shown because you're a woman. Like, I don't know if that's happened for you.
Yeah, that's a great question again. So you just keep them with the great questions, and I love that. That's why you guys are podcast hosts. And I think for me, it's, a lot of times, sometimes you'll see women put into these roles that they think women should be in. And so for one, we're usually put in kind of the moderator role, which is nothing wrong with, and I've done it many times, right? But it's also fighting to show, I have an opinion and a viewpoint, and I can be included in this debate style show, and I should be included in this debate style show. So it's fighting to make sure that, not only, as you said, are we getting in, but we're getting fair opportunity, right? I served this year in the NFL draft as a draft analyst. That was amazing. And people reached out to me saying, you know what, Kelsey, I really haven't seen many female NFL draft analysts. And it's true, right? Because on the football side of things, usually, again, they put women as talking heads. Again, nothing wrong with that. And I've done that, but it's fighting for more. Working as a sideline reporter, again, something I've also done, but also we're seeing more women do play-by-play, right, in color and many other things. So fighting to kind of get out of those kind of stereotypical multiple roles, which are obviously just great jobs and great roles, but again, proving that we can do more, because women are multidimensional. There's so many people that are multidimensional and can do so many different things. And so again, it's fighting for that and realizing sometimes you'll have people that don't just want you there. I don't know if you guys even see Twitter during these NBA games, but like there's people saying like they don't want Doris Burke on because of her voice and she sounds like a woman. Like, what? BB is one of the best to do it. Like, what are you talking about? And just some of these excuses that people try to make to like hold you back, or they talk about your outfit or how you look, the things that women kind of have to face when we're not, that shouldn't even be what the talking point is. You should be listening to what I say. And it's one thing if you disagree with something I say, your viewpoint, your opinion, that's fine. I'm cool with it. But if you're more focused on, things that aren't even a part of my broadcast or job, then that's a problem with you, right? Not a problem with me. The problem is that sometimes, some news stations or whoever hire, they won't even want to deal with that. So sometimes they're like kind of stick to the same old, because they're afraid to push that needle because they're afraid of what happens. But I think we all have to remember, you never know what's going to happen until you push the needle, and positive change will always have some, negative side effects, but it's needed, right? Because again, America's going like this and the world is going like this. And we have to make sure we're part of that progress and continual growth, because I'm very big into sports media reflecting a society, right? And society is continually getting more diverse. So sports media needs to catch up with that. But again, as a woman, it's just, again, always proving yourself, always proving that you're supposed to be there, or fighting for that space and making sure that you're heard, right? And not only that you're heard, but that what you're saying is being taken into account and hopefully being implemented.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing. I know that, and I know my wife talks about it all the time. Like the women have to worry about so much more than the men do. Like whether it's the whole appearance. I remember, was it Carrie Chapman that people was like, I was like crucifying, but it was like tweeting about how she was showing too much skin. I'm like,
yeah, I think it was her legs. And Bristol Carey's a beautiful woman with long legs, which many people love to have long legs. But it's like they weren't focused on what she's saying, or like when we always have like Pam Oliver not talking about her broadcast abilities. Like these are things that women always have to constantly face, fat shaming and things like that, like stuff that shouldn't even be a part, but people don't want to take you seriously. And because of that, they try to find other ways to kind of bring you down and tear you down, which is something as a woman you just unfortunately continuously have to face.
And to that, the thing that I was thinking about while you're saying that is that sometimes I feel like, in my personal experience, and I've seen people, like some of my friends, they don't like it when women know more about sports than what they know. And it's just like, I would like to have someone know more than me. I want to have that conversation with someone about sports. I'm not trying to just try to explain maybe how basketball works. Like I will gladly do it, but like if someone knows more than me, knows about me, it can teach me something, I'm like, okay.
Right. And that's not a bad thing, right? I mean, none of us are the smartest person on the subject, but again, that person is there for a reason. And like you said, I mean, if a woman knows more than you, well, guess what that means? You need to go back home and do some more studying and read up. If anything, that should challenge you and push you. To me, that should push your competitive side and spirit. And if anything, I should feel like you should be empowered seeing that. Again, because it's a new day. Like women know a lot of stuff, all right? And many times I was that girl growing up in sports debates that would leave the guys just kind of speechless. But I love that, right? And they respected me for that. But now it's making sure that people that don't know you can respect you for just knowing your job and doing it to the best of your abilities. Because at the end of the day, you should want quality people on programming, right? You shouldn't want anybody on a broadcast that doesn't know what they're talking about, because that doesn't do justice to the network, or that doesn't do any justice to the sports fan. And so it's really finding ways to embrace that and empower that. And this is why having men like you on the show talk about this, it's so important, right? And making sure that we're amplifying women's voices and making sure that those voices are supported.
No, go ahead, B. I know you're about to say something.
No, it's good. I was just, and you're right, and that's why we have the podcast, and that's why we're talking about it. Because we're trying to, as it's capturing the game, we're trying to capture moments in the game, and then other sides of the game with different people's perspective, and just letting people know like there's different things happening in the world out there. Like everyone has their own story, and it's just cool that the past people we've had, and just how almost similar it is in the same way, and just the struggles that everyone's facing within the sports industry and sports world, and just trying to make a name for themselves. So it's nice that we have you on here, and that we're doing this so we can just get every viewpoint, let people know like the sport world is real, and like there's struggles everywhere, and we're just trying to bring those to the light and just let people know.
Exactly. Like you said, sports is like anything else. But people, I always say this all the time, like people see the glory side of sports, right? Because when we're posting on the gram or posting on Twitter, we post the good things, the wins and the positive things. Most people aren't posting the struggles, and that's most people in general, right? You post the happy times in your life on social media. It's a lot harder to post your kind of trials and tribulations that you've been going through. Not that that's a bad thing, but sometimes it gives people an unrealistic view of what's actually happening, right? And so I think it's making sure that that's exposed and that we have a conversation, because at the end of the day, somebody coming out of college now should hopefully have an easier path into sports than I had, right? Because again, it's about that progress that we're making. And that's kind of why too, I like being on the teaching side of things as an adjunct professor and faculty member, because it's like you're giving back, right? And helping students hopefully again have an easier time making it in sports, helping them make connections, because you want them to succeed, you're empowering them. And again, you're supposed to be leaving it better than you entered it. So I'm very big into that.
Yeah, I'm big into that as well. I just recently finished my I got my master's in engineering management.
Congratulations.
Thank you, thank you.
Master's girl.
So one of the things I'm trying to do is go back and start teaching. I remember the feeling of being in a classroom and going through a majority of my college career without seeing another professor that looked like me.
Right.
And so I wanted to be an example for the young adults that are looking to enter this field. I want them to at least teach them, show them the trades that I learned, but also, be the representative and just show them that, what this field is like and what, you can do, what you can't do, and just be, just to pass the torch along. You hit the nail on the noggin when you said, they should have a much easier time than,
Right.
than I did. And I want to know, for people that are, that are trying to get into the sports media field, that are just trying to be a sports analyst, what are some of the best tips or advice that you can give to them today?
Yeah, that's such a great question. Something that you touched on, I think is so important. And you talked about, not always seeing people that look like you. And I think that's also something that drove me and pushed me into sports media. Because, growing up, I didn't get to always see women that looked like me in sports
It
media.
wasn't.
And I always wondered why. And luckily, my parents would be like, what, Kelsey, well, you can be what you don't see, right? And that's what kind of pushed me. And luckily, I had supportive parents, that saw that I wanted to do something. And they always told me there's not a reason you can't do it just because you don't see it. You could be that first. And I think now we're living in a time in sports where we are seeing so many firsts. Like, look at what Duke has done in their athletic director. And there's so many examples again, but it's an exciting time. But going back to just what you have to do to be in this industry, I give 3 words that have just driven me throughout life. And that is bet on yourself. And I say bet on yourself because it means taking a chance on yourself, right? And so many times people will take a chance on buying a lotto ticket, right? You take a chance really every time you step out the door, right? Anything can happen. Take a chance on yourself, believe in yourself. And when I say that, it means to invest in yourself. Many times people tell me, hey, Kelsey, I want to start a podcast. What do I have to do? Well, let's start. Let's create an idea. Let's create a logo. Maybe let's buy a domain. Are we picking a co-host or not? Let's invest in equipment, right? It's more than just saying, I want to start a podcast and thinking it's going to just fall into your lap and it's all of a sudden going to be successful. You all know the hours that go behind editing it and, writing the description, getting the pictures, doing the promo. It's a lot of work. So are you willing to put the work into that? Maybe it's getting a promotion at your job. Maybe it's going back to school and getting that master's degree, right? There's so many different things. When you bet on yourself, again, it's believing in yourself and taking a chance. You might see a job where it says, you have 10 years, you have to have 10 years of experience. Maybe you have 4. Take a chance and apply. All right. Let me tell you, at this time, day and time, there's many different factors, right? Don't let anything stop you. Maybe LinkedIn is your thing. Maybe you want to connect with somebody on LinkedIn to get a job because they work at that company. So maybe I'm going to invite them out to coffee, kind of pick their brains and see if I can really see if this company is the right fit for me. So betting on yourself, again, is believing in yourself and really investing in yourself, right? If you want to be a broadcaster, it might be hiring a voice coach. It might be getting, your first reps at the local community station, the local community TV station, which is how I started covering high school games. Maybe that's what you should be doing, right? If you really want to go into broadcasting. And so it's looking at all the different steps. But I think the biggest thing in sports too to know is to network. You should always be networking. What I tell every single person, especially my mentees, is that you should never walk into any room and no one know your name name when you walk out. All right. That's networking 101. If you ever walk into a room, at least one person should know your name, know that your presence was there when you walk out. And that's so important, because otherwise, why are you in that room? If you go in a room and no one knows you're there, there's no point in you being in that room, right? So always being hungry, being aggressive, which you have to be in sports. Sports, unfortunately, isn't one of those things where just because you went to school, you got the degree, you got straight A's, that, oh, here you go, your next sports center anchor. It doesn't work like that, right? It's a lot different. You're going to have those, again, this winding road to get to kind of where you want to go to, but always keep your eye on the prize, but be flexible and be willing to do different jobs to get there, which should mean when you're betting on yourself, you're betting that you know how to do video editing, you know how to do play-by-play, you know how to do sideline reporting. Basically, you need to be multifaceted, right? And have multi different skills. But also, I think my biggest lesson would also say remain humble and be kind. You'd be surprised how far that takes you. Never think you're too big to do something. If someone called me today and asked me for a job, my boss called me today and said, Kelsey, can you cover high school sports? I haven't covered high school sports in about 4 or 5 years now, but guess what? I'm not too proud. I would go back and do that in a heartbeat, because again, always remember that you can be knocked off, and just be kind to everybody along the way. When you're going to a game, talk to the ushers, talk to the janitors, talk to the security guards, talk to the players, talk to their moms, their girlfriends, their wives. Just be kind to people, because you're a generally good person. And I really think that stuff will come back to you. But again, it all falls back to just betting on yourself, believing in yourself, investing in yourself. And when that happens, others will believe in you too, and they will invest in you too, and they will bet on you and take a chance on you too for that job or opportunity.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. And you mentioned betting yourself and all this advice that you've given, and it's great. We love that. I was just curious with the bet on yourself that you said. So what made you start your own career path within sports media? I know you mentioned it's a bet on yourself. So what in your mind is like, okay, I got to do this for myself. I got to go out and make my own thing. Where'd that come from?
Sure. So I will tell you, I will never forget, I was sitting in my Psych 100 class. I was sitting there, I remember I was twiddling my pencil, I was listening, but I just remember I wasn't passionate about psychology. And so I started off college actually as a psychology major, because in my mind, I'd actually wanted to do journalism, right? But my parents talked me out of it, because they were like, well, Kelsey, journalists don't make money. And when you're a young kid graduating high school, I want to make money, I wanted to make all the money that I could.
That's right.
I did psychology, because I was like, psychologist seems pretty cool. I like Law and Order SVU and CSI and reading into people's minds. So I'm I think I can talk to people. I just remember no passion was there. So talking about betting on yourself, I switched majors to Maryland's journalism program. Both at the time in Maryland were limited enrollment programs. They're super picky and choosy about who were in those programs. And then also knowing that I had to catch up on a lot of credits when I made the transfer over. So I tell people all the time, my last semester of college, when everybody else was partying, I was taking 27 credits that I had to get extra permission to take. So you guys can imagine how my last semester in undergraduate went, but I got through it, which is what matters. But it just goes back to me, just again, knowing I wanted to do something and knowing I wanted to put the work in to make that happen. And I think for me, when I got out of college, when I was graduating college, everybody was applying to jobs, and everybody started getting these jobs in super small markets, which is usually how you do start. But being in DC and always having, and I'll tell you, I'm a person that, I had done a bunch of internships. I think I did about 15 or 16 internships in college, had a lot of great feedback, a lot of great recommendations. And I was thinking, why should I have to go to a small town just to get back here when I'm already kind of in, the place I want to be in? I love DC. I love the DMV area, and people are telling me really good things. And this is when, I'm going to take a chance, bet on myself, and try to do my own thing. And again, not easy. When I first started out, there was no pay, right? So I have a full-time job, paying for my side gig, paying for my hustle, right? So I'm going from a full-time job to at night covering games, right? So covering high school games first and covering collegiate games, and eventually working my way up to cover the Wizards and the Mystics and things like that. Again, no pay, and I'm actually paying money to get to games. So taking the Metro train there. I remember covering Washington football team game and getting on the last Metro train back home, finally making it in. And this is kind of before Uber and Lyft got as big as it is now. But just knowing what I wanted to do. And eventually I kept at it. I kept networking with people, right? Putting my work out there, getting better, taking tips and tidbits, shadowing people, asking questions. And before I knew it, I'm putting content out. I started with the blog when blogs were still a thing, right? And I started putting my thoughts on there and comments, and again, keeping in contact with people. And then I saw it, my base kind of started to grow and opportunities started to come my way. And it was great. But at that same time, I said, you know what? I need to make myself stand out. I need to make myself be different. And so one of the things I did in college that made me different is I interned for NASCAR. I did their diversity internship. And I always tell people I did something out of the normal because growing up, I had never watched NASCAR, was not a fan of NASCAR, knew of NASCAR, but I thought about it and I said, hey, what will be something that makes me stand out? Not many Black women probably have NASCAR on their resume. So doing NASCAR is one of the best things I did, one of the most challenging experiences I did, because I was in college. They told me about a week before I got the internship, I'm taking finals and I have to move to Charlotte, North Carolina. So I spent the first week in Charlotte with the girl I met, Lauren. She's awesome. I met her during our internship kind of diversity training. Slept on her couch for the first week because she already lived in there until I could find apartment housing for the internship stipend that I had. And so I took that mindset while I was freelancing, and I realized, you know what, I need to take a chance again. And so I was like, you know what, I'm going to do grad school. I'm going to go back and get my master's, and I'm going to get it at Georgetown. You know, growing up in the DMV area, Hoya paranoia was a real thing. Georgetown's a great school. They had a great sports industry management program. So it's like, you know, I'm going to get in that, give myself a leg up. I saw the great professors they had in faculty, and all the faculty worked at all the sports kind of properties that we have here in DC. So I'm like, oh, we'll talk about networking and just kind of being with the right people. And then Georgetown had a great program at the time where it was only 3 semesters for the accelerated program. So I started working with Georgetown, doing internships, interning for Georgetown University at the same time. And again, I'm also still freelancing at night, doing sports reporting and letting everybody I know what I do, right? I'm posting my content, putting it on social media, and kind of started to get income for people to ask me. People started asking me to host different events, speak to different students, you know, all of these things kind of started coming. And I realized for me, it was because I think I had that feedback and knowing that people wanted me to do stuff, and people kept telling me I'm great, but you can do this, this, and this to get better. And knowing that people, I had that positive feedback and everybody telling me they had faith in me, and hearing from people like legends and icons, you know, in this industry saying, Kelsey, like, you're good, just keep at it. That was the feedback that I needed. When there's people in DC that have been here for a long time, people from ESPN, you know, our local news stations telling me I had something and that it was special. I was like, all right, you know, this is the field I need to be in. And that means I can do it. I just have to find a place for myself. But also knowing that I had to, again, have a job to support that dream. And so I think for me, the moment that I knew it, I'll tell you, and I think when life kind of came full circle, was when I got a chance to get a call from ESPN at the time to cover the Super Bowl with them on radio. And I was like, wow. All right, so I'm covering Super Bowl. There's people I know who've been in the industry so long and haven't covered Super Bowl yet. I love football. This is going to be a tremendous opportunity. And talk about, again, making sure that when you're in a room, people know you're there. And it was a life come full circle moment for me, because on Radio Row, I was like the Black woman on Radio Row doing sports talk radio. That probably doesn't surprise many people, but go to any sports talk radio station in any city and find a Black woman doing it. And it's so unfortunate, but there should be many more. So again, just knowing I'm in this space, one of a few to be there, and telling people, you know, I'm doing well, having all these athletes come over and celebrities come over and just really have a good time with me. I thought that was big. And I think for me too, when I started my podcast, I think there were so many people telling me I was great, you all, but then they weren't offering me a job. And I was like, well, wait, how are you saying I'm great, but like, you're not offering me a job, right? Like, these two things don't seem like they're matching. And everyone's like, but you have a great voice and we love what you're saying. And so I was like, all right, well, if they're not going to give me a job, you know, and I'm doing all this great stuff, well, I'm going to find a platform myself to put this content out there. And lo and behold, that's where my podcast was born, Listening with K&N. And when I tell you, I started off, my first guest was Brian Mitchell, of course, from Washington. So I started out with him, and it was truly incredible and amazing. And, you know, when they get LeVar Ball on, and everybody's like, wait, how'd you get LeVar Ball on? We haven't even had LeVar Ball on the show. And then I've had Warren Moon on, and just so many people. I just did a podcast show with Chris Zork, Amari Stoudemire. Like, the names just kept growing, and people, it went from me pitching guests to my podcast to people now pitching me to have guests on my podcast, right? So again, life coming full circle, and people kind of coming and they believe in you. So I think for me, it was just honestly getting that feedback and creative support. But the biggest thing was believing in myself and knowing I could do it. And I'm very big on walking in your purpose and by faith, right? And also I just had that passion for it, right? So having passion for it, having a purpose for it, but also believing in the Lord above to guide me through. And I always just saw sports broadcasting my future. So I never strayed away, right? When you're meant to do something, you're going to make sure that you're walking your purpose and your path. And you're not going to let anybody deter you from that. So I think that's kind of what fed me and kept me going. But also, again, when you know when you're meant to do something, when you know you're good at something, that's not a bad thing. That's not being conceited, but that means you keep at it, right? I know there's some things I just can't do. Like for me, for instance, a 9 to 5, just sitting in the office, I like to be active. I like to move. So that would be a bit challenging. I mean, I would be that person that's always probably getting up every hour to like walk around and move with people being like, Kelsey, what are you doing? But again, just knowing that it was something that it ignited my fire in me and I was excited about it, and it really wasn't work. That's when you know you're doing something that you love.
Yeah, I know for me growing up, it was always technology. I mean, I love sports, but technology was like my go-to. Like you can see me in front of technology, I'm gonna either try to figure it out or I'm gonna uh try to either make it better or I'm gonna fix it. You know, I'm just try to be the technology guru, and then people in the family would just call on me. It was like, hey, can you come fix this, or can you come look at this? And
that would have been calling me like, hey, it's broken. Can you come fix it? After the IKEA building stuff, anything more technical than IKEA, I kind of stopped at and had to call a friend, right? Use my lifeline and call a friend.
Yeah, I became the lifeline for so many people, and so I do that on the side from time to time. People would just still call me up and say, can you look into this or can you walk me into this? I was like, yeah, no problem. I got you. But yeah, it's funny that you mentioned Radio Row. Is it called Radio Row?
Yep, it's still Radio Row. Yep.
Yeah, because I listened to Lawrence Holmes. He's in Chicago. And so when I'm listening to him, I remember him talking about his Radio Row experience and saying like that whole atmosphere is just crazy with just the all the booths, the interviews, people walking through.
It's nonstop. I have to tell you this, Desmond. Like I remember my first Super Bowl, after you do Radio Row from like 7 a.m. to like 7 p.m. at night. And the people are like, hey, do you want to go to this party and that party? I'm like, party? I've been here more than 12 hours doing nonstop interviews. Every 15 minutes, someone's coming. And you guys, and like, I was exhausted. So like when everybody else was out, I'm in my hotel room back, like just knocked out. But like what you just said is so true, because Radio Row was the one place where you have, think of any celebrity just walking around and you're sitting there with like your microphone, your headphones on, and you're just broadcasting live, right? Like at one moment, I remember I was interviewing Jeezy and Lil Nas X was walking behind me. Like what? That's Radio Row. And then Aaron Donald comes through. Like, I mean, that's Radio Row, and what an experience. And again, talk about just incredible moments. For me, covering Super Bowl was just like one of the biggest blessings, but also just knowing you're walking in your purpose, through your passion. Because when you're in that moment, you're at the pinnacle of sports, and just knowing people want to come and stop and sit and talk with you, and PR people like, hey, can you come interview so-and-so? That's huge, right? It gets no bigger than that.
It really does, especially again when you're walking in your purpose, and there's no greater feeling than that. I see my wife. When I look at my wife, she does it every day. She's working and aspiring to be a sports agent. She is a sports agent, but she's still she has a different walk about her when she's actually doing stuff or accomplishing things as being a sports agent, compared to the stuff that we have to do on a day-to-day basis just to get
right.
So it just walking in your purpose, and just it definitely takes faith, just to keep you insane, just to know that there are brighter days coming. We just gotta get over the initial hurdles, the stuff that you have to cover, the high school sports, whatever it is at the moment.
You have to do, And I tell people that all the time. Like, I think sometimes people think that you just because you'll have people that want to just come up and like cover a Washington football team game. And I'm like, do people know? I think I worked like 3 years before I finally covered a Washington football team game. Like, you're covering the NFL. That's like the top of sports, And again, you can't be too humble. Turning on covering community access TV, right? And work through that aspect. So I tell people all the time, again, it's like, if you really want to do something, you have to put the work in. And working in sports, you're going to work a lot of long hours. Mm-hmm. You're at the game about 2-3 hours before it starts. And then you're at the game about 2-3 hours after it finishes. All right. And then you're doing that same cycle again, you're transcribing. When my first sports like broadcast internship, I was transcribing games, and I was logging games, which basically means everything that happens in a game, you have to put a time code for. And I interned during summer when I was doing baseball, and you know how long baseball is, so you can imagine how fun I was having logging, but I did what I had to do because again, I had a greater purpose. And at that internship, I was able to network. But again, you put that work in, wasn't doing the most fun or glamorous things, but it happened, and sometimes I feel like I meet younger people who, don't want to do that work. And it's like, well, if you want to succeed, you do have to put the time and the energy and effort in, because again, unless you just know somebody in sports, or maybe you were lucky enough to be born into like a family that has a lot of connections, you're going to have to put work in, because there's a lot of people that want to do it. And there's only so many positions or spots. But I will say something that's really cool now is that you do have so many more people starting their own thing, right? And I think that's exciting. A lot of sports startups, talked about technology, a lot of these sports tech companies, like there's so many things happening now. Just talking about sports tech, look at virtual reality and that space that's in, or look at esports and that growth in the game. And so it's still growing, which is great. And there are opportunities, but again, you have to work hard for those, because there's so many. Everybody wants to work in sports, but there's only so many spots or spaces. So prove all that work that you've done as to what your value will be when you get there. And also, and in terms of investing in yourself, don't think that your day job has to be the only thing. Maybe you do want to do broadcasting, but maybe your job is as a PA first. Well, guess what? Start a YouTube channel, after your job, where you're covering sports, talking about the NBA playoffs or whatever you're doing, right? And so that way you still have a job in sports, you're networking, but you're also still getting better at what you want to do, right? And building those reps and getting people to see you, thus brand building.
I totally agree. So how has being, because I know you're a big fan of the game as well, but you also had the professional side as well. Has your professional side affected your fan side of you?
That's such a great, I'm like, you guys ask good questions. Okay. So that's one that I think every sports person has to ask themselves. And I will tell you what, that's kind of why I covered the Washington football team. So I grew up in the DC area. So I grew up, was a fan of the team, but I actually grew up a Baltimore Ravens fan. And so it's funny, sometimes I'll joke, I'm like, well, it's much easier to cover the Washington football team because I've supported this team, but my fandom wasn't like that when I was a kid, right? And so I'm not going super crazy, but I'll tell you, at the end of the day, as a journalist, we do have to remember to be objective, and people listen to me not because they just want to hear me as a fan. They listen to me because I'm a journalist, and that's why I went to school, right? If I just wanted to be a fan, I can get back the money from the University of Maryland in my broadcast journalism degree, right? Because that's what I went for. And so believe me, I think you do have to be a fan of the game to cover sports, and that's okay. But again, you also have to remember you're getting concrete information into your stories and the value add, right? Because if people want to just listen to fans, they could just log on Twitter and follow whoever. They're logging on to you because you're a credible source, right? And they want information from you, and you've built a relationship with the team and players. You're trusted. You're someone that can give them something that they can't get anywhere else. Again, you should have that fandom, because sports are a lot more fun when you have that fandom. And again, for me, I bring my growing up in the DC area, and especially like when you're working on different like pieces of a game, part of the game is the fans, right? And sometimes your fans are driving that story. I mean, look what happened in the NBA playoffs. We talked about fans for a couple of games. We had fans acting wild and acting crazy, right? During games. But I think that fandom will drive you. But again, at the end of the day, you are a journalist. And a journalist has to have some type of objectivity when they're covering sports. And so watching football team, again, I am able to talk about all of their positives and what they've done well, but being a journalist, I also have to talk about where they can grow, right? And where they might have some growing pains. We talked about, for instance, this year, we went through growing pains with the quarterback position, but still somehow find a way, right, to be the NFC East Division champions and almost leave Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers shaking in their boots, right? Because what a game was. So again, it's being able to talk about those different things, talk about what's happening off the field, talk about what Black Lives Matter movement has meant in terms of sports and so many different other things. So you have that fandom, but don't let that fandom ever override your journalistic integrity.
Yeah, speaking of the Black Lives, the Black Lives Matter movement, how was it covering or being in the NFL with, seeing everything that was happening with Colin Kaepernick and just people not really getting the message that he was trying to promote and preach?
Yeah, I think that's something that, it's as a person sometimes, I think people sometimes do just see us as journalists and forget that we're human beings living in this country like everybody else. And I think they do the same thing for athletes, right? We think they just play their sport sometimes and that like they don't live in America, where it's like, no, at the end of the day, when they take off their helmet and their shoulder pads and the rest of their football uniform, they're just like you and me, maybe just a lot bigger and a lot better at sports, but they're still human beings, right? At the end of the day. And so I think for me, it was hard sometimes. And you see people saying things and you're like, they just don't get it. But I also know as a journalist, again, then it's my job to cover the story and cover both sides. Again, that's the biggest thing, cover both sides, even if you don't agree with that side, but it's to get the story out. Because I think for me, the hardest day actually for me as a journalist was January 6th. And if you guys remember January 6th, that was when they stormed the Capitol building, right? We had rioters in the Capitol building, and being in DC, growing up in the city, knowing how hard it is to get in the Capitol and how sacred the Capitol is for many of us that live in DC and have walked in it, that was hard. Just seeing people come into a city that I love and just disgrace it like that, right? And then seeing players, talk and tweet about it, and still trying to keep my, I had to record a show, like still trying to keep, my kind of get head in the game and, tell stories, this is what I'm talking about. But also, again, still being able to listen to people who are on both sides of the spectrum. So again, as a journalist, you have to remember though, you're not the story. My job is to get the story. All right. So that's the biggest thing you always have to remember. I think the Black Lives Matter movement, it is okay to sometimes put yourself in the story in that instance, because who better to write about a topic or speak on a topic than someone who's lived it? And there's nothing to tell you that can beat lived experience. And so when players are able to talk about how it was growing up, if I'm able to pull in something that I've experienced, that brings me closer as a journalist. That's something you should do, because especially when you're interviewing somebody, you kind of got to find a common ground or a common point. And when you do, you kind of mesh and again have that trust and credibility factor for it. And so I think for me, being able to see the Black Lives Matter movement and what it went from Colin Kaepernick kneeling to us having a wider conversation, not just in sports, but outside of sports, and kind of a nationwide conversation, that was huge. And I was honestly honored to be a part of that and to cover that and to still keep talking about that, making sure people see that the WNBA, for instance, has been one of the most progressive leagues and has been talking about this for a long time. But some of y'all don't know that because you're not covering it, right?
Right.
Making sure that I'm able to talk on those issues and matters and just, again, help to amplify the story and kind of give a voice to the voiceless, making sure I'm, again, having all sides covered, but hopefully putting a spin on it. But I will tell you, it's sometimes hard because, again, you're trying to be, I've talked to people on my podcast even who, see Colin Kaepernick feeling as completely opposite than I do, but giving them a space to have their conversation, but also me having my conversation. But I'd say the biggest thing, Desmond, is knowing your platform. Maybe I am on a debate style show where we're able to go back and forth, but if it's a story I'm writing that's on them and the story's about them, and I'm keeping myself out of it, right? But if it's on radio and I have a listener calling in, I'm able to go back and forth with them, right? Because we're having a conversation, and a conversation at the end of the day is what needs to be had. It doesn't mean we're agreeing on something, but it means we're at least talking, so I can at least hear you and you at least hear me.
Yeah. I'll go ahead, B.
No, I was just saying like that. What the thing you said about the conversation, I think that's some of the things that people might forget about when you guys be in journalism and what you guys do, is that you're just trying to let people know and inform them with, part of your viewpoint in it too, but you want to inform them. Some people just don't want to have that conversation about certain things because they have their own opinions and they just don't want to hear any opinions. So they just like kind of shut the door to what you guys have to say. So I kind of think that also is a challenge for you guys because you're trying to just get out there, but then people just don't want to hear it. And that's
exactly. Just put something about Colin Kaepernick and immediately you'll see kind of both sides, and people probably not even read what the story was about. They're just going to see the name and automatically, just start to type whatever they want to type. And you're right. I think a lot of times, things happen in this country because we're just not sitting down sometimes and listening. And again, just because I'm listening to you doesn't mean I agree with you, right? But I'm at least giving you a chance for me to hear you speak and to hear you talk. And again, to have a platform. But at the end of the day, again, journalists, we're covering things. We have our own viewpoints and opinions, but we are trying to get you the news and information. But I'd also tell people, watch who you're following. You do have some people who are personalities. If you're a personality, I've worked as a personality, I'm able to interject my opinion and viewpoint into things, right? And you may agree with it, you may not. But there are some people who are just hardcore journalists who are only giving you the X's and O's or the, just the facts that happen, and follow that. So know who you're following, but also don't be mad if they disagree with you because you're not the same person. So nobody should be exactly like you because you are the only version of you. And that's a good thing. I try to make sure people remember that.
Yeah, I man, when you brought up the storming of the Capitol, you talked about how you felt about that. I just think back to I remember I was sitting in a parking lot before I went to work, just just right after one of the shootings or killings, and I was listening to Jason Goff at the time on 670 Score when you're still working there, and just hearing him how emotional that he was, just being on air, just finding out what is happening and watching that stuff. My hearts go out to those broadcasters that have to try to still, be a journalist at that particular time and still try to remove themselves, but still try to, let cover both sides. And it's it's super hard to do, especially when it's stories like that that's emotional, and it's just tough to cover.
It's not easy at all.
Yeah.
And it's okay. Like we all have moments, in time where sometimes you'll break out of that role. But again, we're human. We're not robots. And sometimes that might
Mhm.
add, value, to your story. I think think about even the journalists that were in the NBA bubble and like what that would do to somebody
Yeah.
like mentally, so there's just different things we have to consider. But again, we're human beings. Athletes have opinions, reporters have opinions, we all have opinions. And guess what? That's okay. You don't have to agree with it, but we all are entitled to our opinion because we all have different lived experiences. And again, the biggest thing that you cannot touch on or talk on is somebody else's lived experiences if you haven't walked in their shoes.
This is
Yeah,
true.
yeah, definitely true. And that's another thing that I like is I like hearing other people's opinions because it kind of just opens your mind to what
Right.
other people are living and what their lives are. Because I might have one completely different life to what you have and what Desmond has, and it's just like I want to hear those because I want to know what's going on. And it's like you want to know what's happening in the world, so you want to hear those opinions. And
Right.
it's just that's just personally that's what I want to hear. I want to hear an opinion. I want to learn more about a situation that I might not know too much about.
Right. And it's not a bad thing. Like, look at us. We're all different, right? On this podcast, we all have different experiences and different opinions, but we can talk about them and then we'll learn from each other. And to me, every day I make a goal of learning at least one thing new. So I love hearing and talking to other people. So I can do that because again, I grew up in the DMV area, but you grew up, you're talking about Ohio. Like I don't get to go out to Ohio often, right? Like I don't know what 90 degrees
great.
in Ohio, right? Like, but it's just the great things that you learn. I'm sure if we get a conversation, we find some things that are similar, but also things that are different. And that'll be our aha moments. And then that just makes us better, right? Because we're more informed, which will never hurt you. And again, in sports, that's a good thing. You want to be informed about as much as you can because you never know where you're going to have to pull from.
Absolutely. Yeah, just having I'm just like you, I like hearing people's stories. I feel like I'm more connected, or when the next time I talk to someone from the DMV or I'll talk to someone from Michigan, I'm like I can connect with you because I know the types of food or the types of restaurants that's in the
There you
area
go.
that
See, and
we
it makes
can.
the conversation better, right?
Right, exactly.
Like for me, I don't know how many people I've had to tell the DMV means DC, Maryland, Virginia, and not where you go get your license, right? But it's fun. They're like, oh, I didn't know that. Now I know what that means. So I'm able to help them. Or when they come to DC, they learn about go-go music and what go-go music is,
Hmm.
right? Not a bad thing. It makes you more cultured. Or since you're in Chicago, I get to teach y'all how we have the real mumbo sauce, right? Y'all have the second rate one,
Look,
but it's okay. It's
look.
fine, right? We're able to
Ooh,
have that conversation.
we are. So I don't even know if I even tell this story with how much time we got left, but I'm going to tell it anyway. So it was me and two of my friends, right? We was in the DC area. We was there because we was preparing for I was a part of the National Society of Black Engineers, so their headquarters is located, in the DC area. So we was preparing for a conference, and people was telling us about the gumbo. They was like, yeah, yeah, you gotta try this. You gotta try that sauce. I think is it what is the name of the sauce? Is
Mumbo,
it
yep, mumbo.
gumbo? They say you gotta try the mumbo sauce. It's better than mild sauce. So me and my friend Nas, we looked at each other like like for real, like all right, okay. So it was about 11 o'clock and probably at night. It's probably raining
Yeah.
outside. We took like a train all the way over to like the DC area just to try the mumble sauce, just so we could compare it. So it wasn't bad, It just
Did it
my
live up to
purpose.
standards? Did it live up to the standards?
I don't. I feel like, look, at this point, I need to try it again.
That was
You
a nice
know,
way to say it so I can stay on this podcast because I almost hit end if you said the wrong thing.
it's worth trying again. So, but yeah, I do remember the talk about the bubble. So Oh man, I have so many friends from the DMV area, and I was gonna call them, ask them like, because I love asking people about questions about the DMV, or
Yeah.
just about where they're from, just some of the favorite slang, or just different stuff that they
Right.
come
It's
up with from
little
the
stuff that
DMV,
you can pull, like
right?
for instance, when we're watching the NBA playoffs, we're able to be like, see Pleasant's own Kevin Durant, right? Because we know exactly
Mm-hmm.
where he's from. And for all those that watch in the water, about how PG County has bred basketball players. And we remember when KD would be like Run and Shoot's own, which Run and Shoot was a gym where a lot of guys would play basketball out of right here in the area. And we say area, but for everybody
Yeah.
else's area, right? But it's those different things. Or like for instance, the show I do with the Washington football team, the fit, able to talk with Chase Young about why he likes New Balances. It's a part of PG County culture, right? So you wear New Balances growing up. So it's those different things. But again, and that's why I tell people all the time, that's why it's great to talk to people, because sometimes you're not talking sports stuff, but you're able to pull from it, which helps you have a conversation with these athletes, right? And an athlete will love, if you know something about where they're from, they're going to love that. Because for me, I like having those aha moments. I'll talk about something I learned from Jimmy Moreland, who plays for the Washington football team. He talked about growing up chasing rabbits. He's like, yeah, I'll be chasing them through like the cane fields and stuff. Where I grew up, I didn't know people do that. I was like, wait, you did what? He's like, chase rabbits. I'm like, oh, no wonder you're so fast, right? But again, it's something that you learn. Then you see it is something normal in that part of Florida that he's from. And then you talk to other athletes, and guess what? They've done the same thing, right? But it makes you, and that's why I tell people again, it's not just talking sports with people. Sometimes when you talk with people, you just learn different things, that lingo, that slang, and it'll mean a lot to them, right? How people say things in different parts of the country, right? It will change. Like we all call, soda, for instance, right? Some people call soda soda, some people call it pop. It might be great to know that for an interview of athletes, from down south that says, hey, I call it pop, and then you're able to kind of bond with them and have that experience. Again, learning anything, you never know when you're going to dig into your toolbox and pull it out, because it's going to come in handy.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. So I got access to this question from my friend Jules. He's from the DMV area.
What's up, Jules?
He's a diehard Washington football team fan.
Wonderful.
So my question I'm gonna ask it for him because I'm assuming he has this question.
Okay.
How do you feel about your quarterback position going into the season, and what are you guys gonna do about it?
When we go from a guy, Taylor Heineke, right? Going
Yeah.
from a guy who was at ODU taking mechanical engineering classes to all of a sudden getting the call to come and play in the National Football League. And we did what we did in the playoffs last season. And, you think about what the Washington football team went through. Alex Smith, everybody saw Project 11 and what Alex Smith went through. We saw what happened with Dwayne Haskins, us thinking in Washington that our hometown guy, Dwayne Haskins, will be the quarterback of the future and the franchise guy. When we kept kind of going like this, right? Kyle Allen. And we just kind of kept asking, well, who's next, right? So now when you get a guy like Ryan Fitzpatrick, who's been a journeyman in the National Football League and who has been there, done that, and has a solid career, we feel a lot better, because if you think about it, Washington's defense was solid. We're not asking many questions on the defensive side of the ball. It was the offensive side of the ball. On the offensive side of the ball, we have weapons, we have receivers, we got a tight end, but we kind of needed that glue to mesh it, make it come all together. And that is the quarterback position, right? So we're still finding out about Heineke and what he can do. Glad he's back in Washington. But again, to have somebody like Ryan Fitzpatrick, who has just done it, I think only has more to prove. Right? Ryan Fitzpatrick is always fighting for some respect, right? So to come to a team like Washington, where you have a bunch of young players, I think it's exciting. And so I think, he's the quarterback for right now. Of course, he's older, so you can't say franchise quarterback for the future. I think we'll get there. But for right now, which is what Washington needs, is they have a chance to re-win the NFC East, right? I know Dak is back, but look, the Cowboys, you still got some questions on both sides of the ball. There's a chance for Washington again to repeat. And with someone like Ryan, who's been there at the top level, these young guys can only learn from him. So I think it's exciting. So right now, I think we feel pretty solid in the DC area. You'll see a lot of Washington football team gear walking around. You see the tickets starting to sell because fans are back and they're excited. And again, they're believing again. We had that feeling that we had when Joe Gibbs was here in the area, right? I mean, people believe in Ron Rivera and what he's done with his football team and this kind of whole turnaround and all that's happening in Washington. So I'll tell you, we believe in Ryan Fitzpatrick. I think he's going to turn some more heads this year and prove why he's the right guy in Washington. Again, after what we went through last year, I think only up from here, because what Washington went through in the quarterback situation and they were still able to finish where they finished. You have to respect Washington for that, because through the name change and just through everything Washington went through, probably the team that went through the most adversity last season with young players, look where they finished. And you got the reigning rookie defensive player of the year now, right? So I know on the defensive side, again, we feel good. The defense last year was so great. It was able to help the offense. But Ryan Fitzpatrick, the beard and everything, we're embracing it in Washington.
I'm sure he's gonna be loved there.
He's already loved. I don't know if you guys know, we have the cicadas here in Washington, which are these huge, like humongous bugs that are the most annoying thing. And, you know, it was so great to see Ryan embrace them and like let them chill in his beard during practice. All right, like, you're gonna fit in very well in DC. If you're not letting the cicadas bother you, nothing's gonna bother you, Ryan. So you're gonna fit right in. But yeah, I will tell you, people are super excited to have him here. Obviously, he's a name that everybody already knew. And so to have him leading this team again with the young talent surrounding him, people are very excited in Washington. So Ryan, we believe in you. You've got to, you know, we've got you. We've got you. And Washington's a fan base that will take care of you as long as you just promise to leave your best on the football field. And I say that as I see your Bears merchandise behind you.
Yeah, I'm a big Bears fan. So
yeah, well, I'm excited to see Justin Fields, you know, like everybody else, and you know, see what happens with your quarterback situation, right? With Andy Dalton and Nick Foles too at that. So I honestly think this is an exciting year for quarterbacks. We don't know what's going to happen with Aaron Rodgers, right? And which is Green Bay. We don't know if Tom Brady will just continue to be immaculate and amazing and do more for Tampa Bay. So I think in terms of quarterbacks, like it's just a really, you know, fun time. You know, I think, you know, I mean, it's just what you look, even Dwayne Haskins going to Pittsburgh, I think Mike Tomlin being the right guy for him, the right coach for him. He's going to be great. And Deshaun Watson, I know he's fan. We still have many questions about his off the football field stuff, but on the football field, just another guy that has, I think, a lot to continue to prove. So it's going to be an interesting year for quarterbacks.
Oh yeah, it's definitely gonna be interesting, you know, and I'm excited for the second year of Ron Rivera in Washington. You know,
Yeah.
big Ron fan. So going back,
of course, being a Bears fan, you gotta be a big Ron Rivera fan.
I am. So you know, it's definitely gonna be an interesting football year. I'm waiting for, especially now when I'm playing 17 games. So that extra game is gonna make a difference. Or even someone like Brady, you know, who's in Ohio. You look at somebody like Joe Burrow, right? Coming back with the Bengals. Like, it's just, again, it's an exciting time for quarterbacks. You look at 49ers. Like, I mean, there's so much young talent that we're just like, look at Trey Lance, right? There's just so much that can happen that we're like excited to see. You know, you look at someone like Lamar Jackson here in Baltimore, who I think can only also go up because he always gets so close, right? But has to just throw that hump. Or, you know, now Patrick Mahomes after the Super Bowl last year, how will he come back and just try to, you know, just prove everybody wrong and prove that he is like the baby goat and, you know, about Brady out. Like, there's just so much. But you're right, the extra game is, I think it's going to be exciting for fans. And I know not all the players are fans of it, but, you know, it'll make a difference, especially when you look at those older quarterbacks. You know, like look at somebody like Ben Roethlisberger. So it'll be something to watch. Yeah, it could be going to this final year.
So many questions, you know, and he heard that extra game. He's probably like, dang.
He probably looking at his body like, I don't know how much
like, look, I was just getting through and now y'all add an extra game, right? So there's so many questions. But I think this is exciting about the football season. I think honestly kind of like the NBA this year. Like, it's a toss-up, right? You just don't know, you know, who's going to be the champion. But it's going to be a fun football season. So I know we're all counting down to the start. And then hopefully COVID won't be a thing again. So we're getting back in the stands and having fans back. I think it'll be all around just good for everyone.
Yeah, hopefully it will be. And as you're talking about this, like, it will be an exciting season with his quarterbacks. And I like to see. I'm not ready for the older generation, the older quarterbacks to retire yet. I keep seeing them play, but I think with this, maybe at a game, it's maybe time they're like, okay, maybe I should put up the cleats and I'll just put it away. But I mean, I'm a huge Patriots fan, a Tom fan, so I don't know if Tom's gonna give up.
I feel like Tom's going to keep pushing that needle. I think Ben Roethlisberger's trying to keep up with him, but he's not the same. But yeah, just like Aaron Rodgers, who is older, but still I think has a lot of gas left in his tank. I'm like you, like I'm not ready for these, like this old regiment, you know, to hang it up because they've just been there. Think about like our childhoods and our lives. Like we're like, we need y'all to keep playing. But at the same time, you know, you have someone like Baker Mayfield. Like there's so many young quarterbacks who do excite me, but I'm like, if you can be like Brady and keep playing, why not? right? Like, why not? And what Brady has done, I mean, he's about to set a record, maybe. And just, I think he's trying to go for the whole both hands. He wants both hands and rings, so who knows?
If I'm Brady, I might as well go for it. If I'm not comfortable, if he can rack up this many rings.
Hey, he could be almost there. I mean, I'm so upset he had those 2 losses. I mean, he could be there one more away, but
yeah. And even the Patriots, what they'll do with their quarterback situation, having Cam back at the helm, or, you're looking at Mac Jones. Like, there's just so many great questions to ask again around the National Football League. So I think quarterback wise, we're really excited about the talent that has come out, and, really seeing if they're able to kind of prove and be on the next level. And even again, talking about older quarterbacks, and Cam's not that old, but just seeing if he'll have that reemergence, right? Are we going to see Superman? Are we going to see a glimpse of Superman, or what are we going to get? And will he be able to kind of help rebuild that Patriots dynasty, right? So there's just so many questions.
It is so many questions. Oh my goodness. I'm looking forward to this season though. That's for sure.
Aren't we all, right? We're counting down, especially once we hit August, you guys know, it's football. Like right now, basketball's having to shine in baseball, but America's game is football right now. I think we all know we love football. There's nothing like it. And so yeah, when we get there again, especially after last year, just not being able to experience football like we wanted to. For instance, my first year working with the Washington football team, I had to do all my player interviews, through Zoom. So it'll be nice to actually see it in person. And then I'm in studio in Ashburn taping for half the year. And then when the COVID outbreak happened, then I'm taping the rest from home. So even me, my first year in the NFL, I feel like I didn't get the full experience because of COVID. I was only able to be around the broadcast people. So I haven't even got to meet some of my coworkers in person yet, right? So it'll be super cool to just kind of have that full experience.
That's tough. That's really tough. Because I know I hear just from the people that I listen to, doing interviews over Zoom is so much different than actually doing it in person. So.
It is. Because when you're in person, you can feed off of somebody's vibe and you can really see how they are. With Zoom, of course, we can all see each other, but you're not right there. And there's something you can read about body language and just, you feel somebody's energy, right? And it's just so much easier. But through Zoom, and then you have technology issues, sometimes the Wi-Fi cuts out, and then it's a lot bit harder, I think. And I'm not opposed to Zoom, but there's nothing like an in-person interview.
Oh yeah.
You just feed off of that person.
Right. Oh man. Look, I know we can keep talking, but we're going to transition to the rapid fire round of our.
All right, let's do it.
Our segment. So this is a game that me and Brady play. Hopefully by now we'll post a scoreboard with a lot of people
with who's winning.
Yeah, with whose side is winning. So this is a segment we call the game within the game. So our question is, are you ready to play?
Of course. Look, I'm in sports. I always got to be ready to go. All right.
All right. So here we go. So the very first question is chocolate chip cookies or oatmeal raisin?
Oh my gosh. Definitely chocolate chip. I do not do raisins. Those of y'all that do, I pray for you. I can't. Nothing like a good warm chocolate chip cookie with a tall glass of milk. Melts my heart.
That is good. A warm chocolate cookie. I'm also, I like both. I mean, we've had this conversation on multiple episodes where it's just I could do an oatmeal raisin one, could do chocolate chip, either or.
They're both, yeah. Well, I'll tell you my favorite one actually from, I don't know if you guys have Potbellies where you are. I think they're national. But Potbellies oatmeal chocolate chip cookie, talk about the best of both worlds. Delicious. Oatmeal chocolate chip, really, if you could combine, probably the best cookie.
I'm gonna have to try that because for me it's been oatmeal raisins, but as on the past couple of episodes I've talked about me cheating on oatmeal raisin with my chocolate chip cookies, so I haven't been quite loyal. So
and chocolate chip is the original cookie. Come on, you got to give some respect to chocolate chip cookies. I feel like that's America's cookie. You have to love chocolate chip cookies, right? And Chips Ahoy and everything else.
You're right.
All right, this next one is, are you TV shows or movies?
I think definitely movie. I would say, okay, I'd say movies pre-COVID, but I think post-COVID TV shows.
That's interesting. What are you watching now that has caused you to change that?
Good question. So I will tell you, I'm one of the people that's just catching up. I just started watching Power, you all. So I just started.
Okay.
But I'm behind. But I think the shows I'm watching on Netflix, I just finished Who Killed Sarah, and that was actually pretty good. I love So Law and Order SVU will forever be my favorite TV show, and I can watch that marathon like all day long.
That's iconic.
What else I'm watching on Netflix? There's something else I'm watching on Netflix, and it's gonna skip my mind. But I will tell you guys, like I'm behind. I'm super behind on shows, but I like mystery kind of questioning shows and like action. But if there are any good shows, please send them my way. But I think I like movies. So like I used to be a person, I used to love like going to movie theaters. And so like now actually post-COVID, I've liked in DC, we have like these pop-up kind of outdoor movies that I actually really enjoy. So they put the screen up, you can bring in like your lawn chair. But I just love like new movies. So like I'm excited to go see the new Fast and Furious. I don't care how many they make of those. I will always be excited to see those. If there's anything that comes to theaters, like I would really go see. But now since like you're home, it's like you don't as much have that urge, I guess, to go out, like, you know. And so TV shows, like they have to just be really captivating. Queen of the South, I watched that on Netflix, and that was actually pretty good. Actually, I'll tell you a TV show I like, All American. I like All American a lot.
All American is really, really good. So
yeah.
That's definitely something that me and my wife, we sit down and watch every time a new episode comes out. So definitely try.
And Netflix and everything else, HBO Max, like all your streaming subscriptions make everything easier because everything's like, you know, right there.
Exactly. All right. So here we go. You get a chance to cover a finals of one sports for the rest of your life. Which sport do you choose?
Finals for the rest. So I can't do football because there's no finals. It has to be.
It could be. I should say championships. So
championships. You know, it's funny because I love football. You know, I think I would do NBA finals though, because I feel like NBA finals, like especially after its last season, we've seen that anything can happen, and there's the atmosphere. Like, so when I did NBA finals, it was Cavs Warriors, and like the atmosphere in Oracle. Oh my gosh! And that you guys remember that shot Kyrie made, right? Game 7.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like that atmosphere as in like any other thing. Like basketball fans, I mean, football fans are like obviously crazy and brave, but like there's nothing like a game 7. All right. NBA finals. So I think I'm doing basketball. It's fun. It's fun.
Yeah, I think I'm choosing basketball too, especially like that moment alone. Like that moment has so many memories for me because it's one of the last times I got to kick it with my cousin before she passed away, and so we was watching the Cavs and Golden State Warriors. We was all in the room huddling, watching the game, going crazy over everything that was happening. And it was just
it was crazy, right? I mean, I remember seeing all the fans in their yellow shirts, or like, I mean, Oracle got so loud, people stood the entire game. Like, there's nothing like that.
There isn't. Brady, what are you choosing?
I think I'm gonna go on the side of basketball as well, just because I like the atmosphere of a basketball game. I was able to work with the Fort Wayne Mad Ants, which is the G League for the Pacers. And I was able to like stat call for them. And I think I've seen a couple like buzzer beaters for the Mad Ants, them winning. And then I wasn't there, unfortunately, when they had their G League record, I think 35-point comeback. I wasn't there for that, but I think just the atmosphere, even of a small team like that, just seeing how dedicated fans are, I think that's probably one of the best things. So I'll choose that.
Yeah.
So going into the next one, what is your favorite colorway for the NFL for the jerseys?
Ooh, that's a good one. I'm trying to think if I have a favorite one. That's a really good question. It's one I've never been asked. Now you guys have me really thinking. I'm trying to think if I have a favorite one. Trying to really think whose jerseys I like the most. I'm going back, you guys, through the season. Sorry, I'm racking my brain.
No, it's fine, sir.
I'm curious, what are y'all's favorite jerseys? I'm really going through my mind.
So, for me, my favorite jersey in the NFL is I like the Chargers uniform. I like that blue and the yellow. The combination of that's really good. I really like. Of course, I like the white jerseys for. I really like a Fields white jersey.
Yeah,
like that jersey look clean. I saw like I was telling my roommate from college because he had ordered as soon as we dropped the Fields, he ordered a jersey, and I was like, "What color did you get it in?" He said, "He got it in blue." I was like, "Man, you got to get it in the white." like that jersey. So
Nice. That's a good one. I think maybe I'm just like, I'm trying to think whoever like, but I feel like I'm sticking like closer to home. I love when the Ravens do the black on black and
the
like
black,
all black.
that was my next
I
choice.
love the Ravens, yeah, when they do the all black. I feel like they've had good luck too when they do the all black in games. But I just think that look is like, and let me tell you, to be a man and be able to rock purple like they do, it's great.
Yeah. The other jersey color that I like too is the Saints with the black, white, and gold.
Oh yeah, the Saints. Yeah, you can't go wrong with the Saints colors. They have good colors. I really like that question though. It was really like and I feel like most people probably would think I would say Washington, maybe because I watch Washington so much. I'm like, their jerseys ingrained in my head, and I always say I love them. But I don't know. So I love black. Black is like one of my favorite colors. So anything like with black in it, I'm like, all right, that one.
No, I was gonna add with mine. I know my mom's probably listening to this when it comes out, but I really like the Dolphins, the all orange, because my favorite color is orange, and I like the orange colorway. And I like how the
That's a
teal
good
goes
choice.
with it. So that's kind of where I'm at. But like Patriots fan, I shouldn't be saying that, but
The oranges, that was a good choice. I actually
That's a
like
good
it. They
choice.
pulled it off. They pulled it off.
That is a great choice. Okay. QB question for you. So Tom Brady or Peyton Manning?
Ooh, that's a good one. Okay, so I think most people would choose Tom Brady, but I'm going to choose Peyton Manning because fun fact, I was in 6th grade. I won the quarterback award from the Boys and Girls Club, and I got to meet the whole Peyton family, the whole Manning family. So I actually got to meet Peyton. Peyton was the biggest star at that time I had ever met, so I will never forget that moment. And so I have to choose Peyton Manning because there's nothing like meeting your first star quarterback. I met Peyton Manning, and then I'm sitting at the table as the award winner with Aaron Brooks. And his family, like talk about just being in the world of like just great. So I gotta choose in terms of like just their significance in terms to me. I would choose Peyton Manning, but if we're talking about obviously overall significance, it had to be TB12. But yeah, Peyton Manning. And when I said that Peyton Manning was like the nicest guy, So I will never forget that moment as a 6th grader that was obsessed with sports, getting the chance to meet him.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'd be a Tom Brady. That's what I'd be choosing. But continuing on. So if you had to relive a sports moment, or rewatch it, which one would you choose?
Oh my gosh. Okay. So if I want to haunt myself, it will be when they said Paul Pierce stepped on the line here in Washington and we were deprived of moving on to the next round. But in terms of my favorite sports moment I want to relive, it'd probably be the 2012 Ravens Super Bowl, New Orleans, Beyonce performing, Jacoby Jones running it back, the lights going out. Like, I just thought that was a moment like I will just always remember. So I think that Ravens Super Bowl, just something special, right? And seeing Ray get another one, and then Ed Reed, and see Ed Reed taking 2 tickets to paradise at the Ravens parade after, like that was just such a special moment. But you're in New Orleans, one of the greatest cities in America. You got Beyonce performing at halftime. You guys remember the lights go off, 49ers like come back, and that game comes down to the wire. I think definitely that Super Bowl will be the sports moment that I relive. But again, if I want to haunt myself, it would be us in Washington knowing Paul Pierce's foot was not on the line, and that we got deprived of moving on to the next round.
I do remember that call.
That still haunts us and hurts us. Like, Ralph, come on. What were you looking at?
Nah, but the Super Bowl choice is also good too. That was also one of my favorite performances as well as seeing Ray Lewis and that team go off and win that Super Bowl. So so here's a question you probably get asked all the time. What would you name the Washington football team?
Yes. Okay. So I'm gonna tell you guys what I tell everybody. So being from the area, it has to be something that has DC in it, right? So a DC, it would have to pay homage to DC. And so our G League team is the Go-Go, obviously based off of Go-Go music. So anything that it's named, it has to be like kind of DC based. I will tell you, I haven't picked one name in particular I like. So I co-host the show with Fred Smoot, and Fred Smoot is always pulling for the Red Wolves, and he does like little ooh like thing. I wouldn't mind that, but it'd be so funny to be in an arena and just hearing fans go like, oh. Right. But for me, it has to again be something DC. So like somebody said like the Senators, like, no, I don't want to do Washington Senators. Somebody said the Metros. do not do the Metros. Do not do the Metros at all. But anything, like I said, just has to pay like tribute to the city and like the air. I would love it to pay tribute to like our glory days in Washington, and like even if it has, I don't know, Joe Gibbs tie-in, maybe because what he did for this franchise. So I haven't picked a particular name, but again, it has to be something that like when people hear it, they think of DC. So something that pays tribute to the natives here and the culture here and all that is DC.
No, I think that's a great.
Picking a name, I'll say, is hard. Like, I think
it is.
All the submission names that have come in, like, I think that's why it was great to be the Washington football team for a year. But you know, because when you're with a team that was previously the Washington Redskins and a name that in DC, like, I mean, it just, you know, it was 100 years, right, of that name.
Yeah.
Picking a name is hard because you have so many people with opinions and viewpoints. But something I do always point out is that, you know, the Wizards, they had people chose that name. If you guys remember, it was a survey and fans actually helped to pick that name. And so I think, you know, the fact that the Washington football team is doing that again, kind of with fans getting able to put their submissions in, I think that's a great thing. Because I do think fans should be a part of the process because the team name is part of their identity. Mm-hmm. Fans are a crucial part of that identity. So it'll be really interesting to see what sticks. But I will say, no matter what name is chosen, and you all know this, not everybody's going to agree with it. Let's just be honest. There are people that are bitter and mad. But my biggest thing is, as long as the team is still rocking the burgundy and gold that we all love, and as long as they're winning, I could care less what the name is, right? I don't know, call them the Washington Winners because we just want to win in Washington, right? Like, I don't know. But as long as they're winning and it pays homage to DC, I'm a happy girl.
I know that's right.
So one of the final questions that we got for today, if you could take over any organization in any sport, which one would it be?
Oh, that's such a good question. So many sports organizations in any sport. So first I'm like, who would I want to take over? You know what? This is probably going to surprise people and I might get some flack for it because I'm in Washington. But something about being Jerry Jones and taking over the Dallas Cowboys just seems it seems very enticing. You know, I want to do a schedule release like him. And who was it that he had in the schedule release? Was it Post Malone? Like, I want to live that lifestyle, you know? So it's like, so I think it could be Kelsey's world, right? For eternity. Like, I wouldn't mind taking over the Cowboys and heading to Dallas. I think that would be a fun franchise to take over if I could.
You're not the first person that said that.
I mean, Jerry makes it look fun, right?
He does.
I want to do it from the draft that he did from the yacht? Like, I want that lifestyle. Everybody's not able, but if I can do it for a day, I'd take it.
Yeah. So where can the people and like the listeners, where can they follow you at and like follow along with what you're doing in the NFL and everything like that?
Well, thanks again so much for having me. This was so much fun. And I hope people do continue to follow. As you might see, I like to have fun on my social media, but also give you guys the good facts. So my website is KelseyNicoleNelson.com. My social media is The Real K Nelson on Instagram and Twitter. And also, if you're old school like me and still like Facebook, you can find me at Kelsey Nicole Nelson. So just Kelsey Nicole Nelson, even LinkedIn, people request and follow me. You can also do that. And follow my show, Listen In with Kanan. It's on Fox Sports Radio. You can also check it out anywhere that you get your favorite podcast, so iTunes, Google Play, and Spotify, and then also subscribe to my YouTube channel, Kelsey Nicole Nelson, where you can watch the live stream edition of my podcast show that comes out every Thursday at 6 and every Saturday at 2 Eastern time.
Yeah, again, we'd like to thank you, Kelsey, for joining Desmond and I today on this podcast. It's a wonderful conversation that we had with you, and we hope that we can have you again here in the near future and just have more interesting conversations.
Of course. Thank you all so much for having me. Fabulous job. Lots of fun. And yes, Jerry, if you're out there, I will gladly take over the job for a day. You can go on vacation. Things are in good hands. All right. Thank you all for having me.
It would definitely be in good hands.
We make some changes, but it will be in good hands.